very happy to have this opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts on this new world, this new normal, we call it, and post COVID-19 pandemic new normal. And specifically, I will be talking about fintech and also financial risk management in the new world. And of course, we know the world has been undergoing significant changes. And the changes primarily propelled by the technological shift. And this technological shift is so powerful. And even without COVID-19, we're going to actually witness changes to the world. And with the COVID-19, of course, things become very complicated. And there are certain aspects I feel very reasonably, I feel quite certain, and I want to share with you. And specifically, I'm going to give the talk on this subject matter with the help of a few slides. So for now, I'm going to just bring out the slides. Okay, so the title of my talk is Risk Management and the FinTech in the New Normal. And again, my name is J.C. Duan. I'm with National University Singapore's Business School. Okay. So before I charge your head, I'd like to make a general observation. You know, as we know, anytime you have a major disruption, and this time COVID-19 is unleashed by nature, we all have to respond to survive. And the Darwinian principle of survival of the fittest for sure will prevail in business, in many other domains. Okay, but I do hope as a human being, I do hope that the new normal creates a new society where there are going to be losers and winners, but the winners will factor into the welfare of the loser. In other words, we have a compassionate society, and that is a bit on the side, and that's not my main thing I want to share with you today. So the thing I want to share is, of course, on the fintech. But so to go back a little bit to understand my point, I would like to start out with saying something I call a dying a slow death. You know, the company here you can see the Kodak, Sears, Nokia, and Research in Motion is also called the BlackBerry. And the Kodak once upon a time was a very mighty company, and it's the inventor of digital photography and all that, but then passed away due to inability to reinvent itself. And in effect, its own demise is due to its own invention. And Sears at one point was a mail catalog company, department store, and it was such a big company. I still remember the days when I went to United States for graduate school side. Sears, we ordered things from the mail catalog, but then, many years passed and Sears went bankrupt. So anyway, a dying and slow death is the best thing with this graph. This graph, later I will point out to where you can find the graph like this. This is a big data undertaking we have been doing at the NUS for over 10 years now. It is a corporate default prediction system. And for now, I'm going to just show you two things. And one is the Eastman Kodak, which actually filed for bankruptcy back in 2012. And then later come out of emerge from bankruptcy protection and listed as a company, but no longer the same kind of companies and no longer a powerful force in the marketplace. But my point was dying a slow death. You can see the probability of default for Kodak, and on the other graph is about Sears. Both are just deteriorating, and this deteriorating lasts for many, many years. So you may wonder why these things are happening. We all know organizations have inertia and resistance to change, and that is very typical of any organization anyway. So the Kodak was doing very well, invented digital photography, but was making tons of money using the conventional film. And so there is no real need to change. Okay, what is the point I'm mentioning here on this dying slow death has anything to do with my assessment about fintech. And here's the point. The point is digital banking. And some of you probably know the lots of digital banking. When I say digital banking, I'm talking about virtual banks, new style of banking using technology, no physical presence, except they exist as a bank. And the digital banking license, like in Hong Kong, they granted 8 banking license, and Singapore now is in approval process. So anyway, they will come on the same. Okay, so I I gave the title of a blessing in disguise, primarily because I thought the conventional banks got lucky this time because COVID-19 really drive the conventional bank to go through the metamorphosis it need to be. And this metamorphosis basically is to develop some digital DNA in the front. If you talk to the bank and bankers, you know a lot of innovation they're trying to do. But many of these are just on the sort of pilot projects, on the test bed to see how it goes. But the COVID-19 forced them to really go serious because they have no choice. So in my view, is a blessing in disguise because this COVID-19, in essence, deprived the virtual bank, the digital banks coming on scene, a growth opportunity. That if we didn't have the COVID-19, they may have this good chance of growing in a niche. Okay, so this time around comes to fintech, digital banking. I would say we're not going to have a same kind of experience with the mighty company like Amazon, which grow out of people not paying attention because the big organization, big retail giants are really not taking that very seriously. And they are also sort of dying a slow death, like Sears. So, so the digital bank in Singapore or elsewhere, and will definitely find their growth potential seriously squeezed. And this is not because the conventional banks' own doing. It's actually forced upon this bank by nature. So that's why I say it's a blessing in disguise. For us to understand the future and the prospect of fintech for the newcomer and also conventional bank, and we had to sort of have a deeper understanding. When I say this deeper, it is actually conceptual in a way. We have to sort of look at technology in terms of transactional versus analytical. When I say transactional fintech, I actually have in mind something like an ATM. Now you say, what ATM? ATM today is what? We're talking about mobile payment. I would say mobile payment today is like ATM in 60. So ATM then was a fintech. Okay, mobile payment today is a fintech. It's today's fintech. And they, to me, belong to something I call transactional fintech. Take an ATM machine, for example. ATM machine is not banking. It's a tools to conduct banking business. The banks, as a bank, is basically goes through the financial intermediary process. Take an excess fund from some depositor and distribute it to those company or individual in needs. This financial intermediation process will not change because of technology. The way we deliver the service is changing. So that's how I look at the things. I will say transactional technology versus analytical fintech. COVID-19, in essence, forced the transactional technology fintech on conventional bank. They have adopted very fast. So turn this around, we have to ask ourselves how the newcomer, the virtual bank, virtual digital banks, if they come to the same, how can they survive? How can they compete? Because remember, by then, the conventional bank will have a significant digital DNA. But I will argue they will have a lot of transactional fintech in place. Okay, so therefore, for the newcomer, they must somehow go deep. Go deep, what I meant is go to really the essence of banking or real essence of finance, is to have a heavy dose of domain knowledge coupled with modern tools. And that is easily said than done because many organizations have a lot of difficulty of that. Why organizations have a difficulty? And in a way, it's quite obvious, right? Because we need to go through training, education. Many things are generational phenomena. If you don't know how to program, to code in computer code, and it's very hard to learn. So that is kind of barrier. Organization also burdened with that. So I would argue the digital bank or any other fintech company operation, in order to succeed well, they need to go deep. Deep in the sense of not based on pure transactional technology. Rather, they had to develop domain knowledge using modern tools. Okay, that to me is a true differentiator. So to conclude what I say here, basically, COVID-19 has accelerated the adoption of fintech by conventional firms. Many things will come out of the sandbox so fast because of necessity. Okay, so the very essence of these changes is still taking place, but the external event or force like a fintech, like a COVID-19, has just basically changed the dynamic somehow. So what happened? It is with this accelerated pace of adopting fintech will create a lot of problems too. For instance, from the regulatory point of view, how to regulate the new kind of risk created by this process, how do we deal with it? So I would also argue the way to deal with the issue created by technology, the only sensible way to deal with it is tackle it with technology. So I cannot see any other way. For instance, people know this program trading, right? The market will move very fast. It's very hard to imagine you can deal with the issue without using more technology. So that's what the point I'm making. So from regulatory point of view, or from any policy organization, you look at the fintech world, it is basically, you have to use a technology to conduct analysis. Because something like COVID-19 will essentially reduce deprive your chance of doing on-site visit examination. So we have to somehow go for the data, go for a new way of doing the old things. I'm not arguing the on-site visit or traditional way of doing will go out completely, but I would argue even after the COVID-19, after we develop, we adjust to the new world and we live with the coronavirus. In that new world, we will still do much less on-site visit examination because all of us throughout this process has somehow developed a certain digital DNA. Okay, so that's the kind of things that I believe is going to happen. Financial risk management in a new world, in the new normal, is actually very important because it's vital to business survival. It is financial stability require financial risk management. So those things are essential, had to be carried out still, but will be done in a different way. Okay, so I'm going to leave with a final slide here. This slide is undertaken at the NUS for the past over 10 years now. It's a big data effort for transforming big data into smart data. And we use that, we do credit analysis and contribute to financial risk management. For those who are interested, can explore this site. It is completely free, open access, and individual can use this as well as, you can sign up, become a user. You can use it for whatever purposes you want to have. The slide I showed you earlier, that dying slow death for Kodak and the Sears, is actually taken from this site. I think I'm going to just stop here, and I understand Q&A follows. Okay, so that question here. The question is, why are all the risk management theory not helping us to prevent the impact of this epidemic and reduce the impact to the economy? Risk management theory and practice, I presume we're talking about financial risk management. Now, some are for short-term, some are for long-term, right? And let me give you a very recent example. Singapore Airlines apparently incurred huge loss from hedging oil futures, because that makes sense, right? Because they use a lot of jet fuel. And it turned out you lose a lot of money. So the COVID-19 turned out to be an event was never been factored in, right? And air traffic just dropped, price tank, and so forth. So risk management theory actually told us Singapore Airlines should have hedged, and Singapore Airlines did the right thing. But the COVID is a kind of event. It's very hard to factor in. In other words, when something cannot be factored in, it's very hard to do risk management. So, let me take this opportunity to differentiate a concept. To make a system or company more resilient is not necessarily a kind of risk management we're talking about. Because more resilient, just developing some capacity to deal with something has not been anticipated. So I will not classify the COVID-19, this episode itself, and companies are not ready for it, as a failures in risk management. I will more probably argue the company is not resilient enough, or economy is not resilient enough. I use Singapore as an example. Okay, Singapore government has built up such a huge reserve over the many years, and so Singapore economy is so much more resilient. Okay, it's not like Singapore government has adopted the risk management practice to deal with COVID, because I don't see how that is possible. You develop capacity, become more resilient. I hope that help out. Okay. Okay. Here's another question, and say that banking faces significant among the local regulation. For example, central banks limiting banking licenses. Do you believe pure online fintech firms, banks, are in a position to be significant threat to traditional banks? Okay, so I think in my talk I already covered a bit, right? I I actually argue that way. I say Amazon kind of model in e-commerce versus a traditional retailer is no longer applicable because we have COVID-19. And simply because COVID-19 forced conventional bank to be ready in order to adopt the digital technology so much quicker. They will rush them out, and they have to because there's no other way. So therefore, the room for digital bank, virtual bank to grow is just seriously limited, I think. That's why I was commenting they have to go deep. In other words, traditional, by relying on this transactional technology, you view as a niche. Okay, that niche itself is disappearing, okay, in the digital banking sense. So you have to sort of discover a new niche. And my argument earlier is there's a lot of niche. I think the go analytical side of the fintech will offer a lot of potential. I hope I answered that question. If a regulator expects digital banks to have a compliance-like functions, like a traditional bank, how can they compete with the existing bank? I don't think digital bank will be subject to any higher level of compliance because of, just a compliance, right? Because the means to carry out banking function, it has to be regulated. We know their importance. We know the kind of trouble they can destabilize force they can unleash. So they will have to be regulated. So traditional or digital bank, they will have to be regulated. My argument is that you have to regulate it with a new means, new technology, and the better technology to combat the issue potential created by technology. And I remember, and during my talk, I actually talked about this program trading, computer program trading, right? And the trading becomes so fast. How can you expect to have a way of regulating them without using technology which can keep up the pace? So another question is, given that traditional banks have much of the digital banking DNA, can new digital bank fintech succeed? I think I already said. If they just simply use a mobile payment and stuff like that, I just don't see they have big room for them to grow. Okay, in order for them to succeed, they really have to look deep into the business model. The one area I can think of is really to think about, for instance, you do credit analysis better. Okay, in other words, by competition, for instance, interest rate has to be very competitive. And if you can control cost better, in this case, it's control delinquency, and you will do better. Okay, that it is area. I don't think just you install ATM. Now I use ATM because it's so obvious, right? One bank install ATM, another bank will install ATM too, right? If no one has ATM, you have ATM, you have a competitive advantage. That kind of technology is sort of commoditized not engineering simple, but from banking service point of view, it's just very piece of ordinary technology. So I would say mobile payment will not get you very far because everyone is going to have a mobile payment. Everyone's going to do internet banking. Okay, so that is the sort of point I was making. Okay, here's a fintech works well in developed countries such as Singapore. And actually, people may even take issue with that, right? Because mobile payment development in Singapore actually coming very slowly. But anyway, developing country versus non-developed country was a point of a question. What about the evolution of fintech in developing country in the context of COVID-19? Now, if we classify China as a developing country, which we should, right? And China really is quite advanced in fintech. Okay, that's interesting. So, in the context of COVID-19, I think in the broader context of recovery. So in developing countries, it's facing the same issue, right? And the banks, just like many businesses, due to the worry of the transmission of disease, the operations being limited, and so you don't adopt technology, what else you can do? Okay, it very much in the way e-commerce has been around, online ordering, home delivery has been around for a while, but the COVID-19 it's accelerated even more. Web lecturing tools already been available, but many people refuse to adopt or reluctant to adopt. But now, due to COVID, it just all sudden. I really don't see that as a developing versus non-developing country, except infrastructure may be very different. Because developing countries tend to have a much better infrastructure. So in other words, everything goes digital, you need the information system, right? And the Ministry of Education or in many countries comes to the web teaching, they realize some kids don't even have a computer or the means to access. So that is infrastructure I'm referring to. So I would say the only difference I will argue is really on that infrastructure part of it. Okay, here's another question. Fintech firms are generally lenient on regulation. So in such an environment, how about the lack of KYC requirements, etc.? Okay, the point here is this. It's a very interesting question. Think about the context. Singapore government included, try to encourage fintech development. Therefore, they adopted sandbox idea. In other words, many things can be sort of tried out first without heavy dose of regulation first. Because we don't know what will work well, what kind of issue will emerge. So we'll see how it goes. So a bit experimenting and try and error basis. So I don't think that will be the regular state or the steady state of it. When we start to adopt fintech in a very serious way, the heavy regulation will come along. Heavy and due regulation will come along. So we cannot view the transitional stage, okay? The KYC mentioned, know your customer kind of stuff. And I think we'll apply as well. Maybe we think it is too excessive for conventional bank, so we maybe scale back a little bit, but I don't think that will happen. But anyway, whatever we apply on the conventional bank, we'll have to apply to the digital bank as well, right? The only difference is we are in a transitional phase. This transitional phase is a kind of concept I was referring to, sandbox concept. How would you foresee risk management model and approach to evolve post-COVID-19? Okay, and earlier I commented on resilience versus risk management. Okay, the way to think about, if I operate the airline, let me go to Singapore airline example again. I operate the airline, I know I consume a lot of jet fuel. The jet fuel price can move up and down, so I have to risk manage that. Right? That's understandable. But it's very different from build up a capacity to be very resilient. But we know there is a limit you can do because there's limited resources. Anytime you build up capacity, it deprives you resources to do something else. So I think what COVID-19 taught us as a lesson is maybe we should build up a little more buffer. Okay. Earlier I used Singapore government's financial chest or reserve as example. People probably including myself, I say to some extent, I think the Singapore's reserve was probably excessive. And now in retrospect, I say, well, was it? Because yeah, that's how government can push out one program after the other to help to sort of sustain this economy. So resilience, to be more resilient, it's it's not the same as what we typically call risk management. Because the risk is something you can put your fingers on. You can make some assessment, right? This is resilient things. This is completely out of the blue, and it just, even we think a pandemic could happen, but I think very few people actually imagine at this COVID-19 scale and its impact, its ramification. Okay, could you share your thought on what analytical insight could be used for? Are you referring to personalized product offering? Okay, I'm talking about financial side. Okay, specifically, earlier I mentioned about the go deep. Credit analysis, I would argue, cannot be just done by a bunch of computer scientists, or they know many of these computer tools, because you have to know the nature of the business. Okay, so conventional bankers, and by centuries of experience in lending, they have developed a lot of intuition and insight. Those are the domain knowledge. And when they couple with technology, I think that is powerful. So I hope all these new digital company, digital bank come along, or any other financial services institution, they will not just use technology and they deploy technology developed by a bunch of technicians, because we should not forget, this is a financial technology. It's meant to do financial services. Okay, I think the time is up. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar, and I enjoyed the chance to share with you. I hope you have some takeaway. Thank you.